Might have the pronunciation of this wrong, but this is about Ole Roemer and the speed of light. This begins with longitude. It was so important that it be correctly calculated by ships at sea that rich prizes were offered by nations built into empires by shipping to anyone who could propose a feasible way to do it. Galileo thought he could do it, using observations of the moons of Jupiter, establishing a Jovian clock, and he was right about that. But his instruments were too crude, his timetables were inaccurate, and it was very difficult, sometimes impossible, to make those precise observations while aboard a ship at sea. A man named Olaus, or Ole Roemer, was attending the University of Copenhagen. His mentor was Rasmus Bartholin. He lived in Bartholin's home and eventually married his daughter, Anne Marie. Bartholin was preparing the papers of the astronomer Tycho Brahe for publication, so Roemer was exposed to a treasure trove, astronomical observations and mathematical calculations based on them. Roemer also recorded data on 140 eclipses of the moon Io around Jupiter. Giovanni Cassini was making similar observations in Paris, and Roemer went there to act as his assistant in 1672. He measured the period of time between eclipses, and they varied. They were not a constant, as they should have been, according to Newton's laws. If his data was correct, Newton was wrong. Roemer decided that Newton was right. He noted that the time got shorter by 3.5 minutes as the Earth was approaching Jupiter, and it got longer by 3.5 minutes when the Earth was moving away. His papers were destroyed in a fire, but we know that Christian Huygens, using Roemer's observations, was able to use the time period, 7 minutes, and the distance the Earth had traveled in that duration to calculate the speed of light at 212,000 meters per second. We know that Roemer was the first to propose that light was not instantaneous. It moved at a finite speed. We now say that the speed of light is 299.792458 kilometers per second, or about 186,000 miles per second. We call this c from celeritas, or swiftness, and we say it is a constant of nature, that all light moves at that speed and that nothing can move faster than c. It is also used to define exactly the length of a meter. I had never heard of this Dutch astronomer, Ole Roemer, who is credited with first quantifying the speed of light, an achievement that astounds me. And while recuperating from a broken leg, he also invented the modern thermometer, showing the temperature between two fixed points where water freezes and boils. He was visited by Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit, who improved it, giving us the version used today. Roemer was a professor of astronomy at the University of Copenhagen. He was also the royal mathematician. In that capacity, he established a system of weights and measures that was remarkably accurate. His goal was to base everything on astronomical constants using a pendulum. Roemer was a clever, industrious man. I should mention that when he went to work in Paris with Cassini, he was employed by the French government to act as a tutor to the Dauphine, and he also took part in the construction of the fountains at Versailles. And he was just getting warmed up. He was named the second chief of police in Copenhagen. He thought that the morale of the force was low, so he fired everyone, replacing them with his own selections. He invented the first streetlights in the city, saw to it that the streets were paved, installed new water pipes and sewers, and he improved the fire department. And in 1676, using his observations of eclipses of the moons of Jupiter, as well as his own wits and an abiding faith in Newton's laws, he reasoned that light had to travel at some finite speed, and he produced the first quantified measurements of the speed of light. And what amazes me the most about all of this is that up until now, I'd never heard of this guy, Ole Roemer. Talk about gaps in an education.